but we got through. You know, there was a lot of, as I say, there was still a long way to fall. Financially, it was calamitous, and we had just to do it all over again, and step by step by step. And then I just started to get things moving, and I was doing okay. I was doing all right with the because I'd started a sports consultancy. We were starting to work with players and that, and we had a financial services practice, which was really interesting. And we had players like, Dwight, Yorke, Justin Fashanu, some really Hugo Ekiog that just recently passed away, and Bosnich, and we had all really interesting players, and we were just starting to build that up. And I thought to myself, and I came home one day and I said to Hayley, so I need to talk to you about something. And she went, go on then. And I said, I think I want to give up business and go to Bible school. And I just decided to stop. So she's like, okay, that's fine, right? And of course I wasn't really thinking about the implication. I just had this, I was still on my healing thing, right? I was still on that trip. And so I kind of gave up the business and let that go. And in fact, they're still going now. They moved it into an agency. They manage about 80 or 90 players now. It's amazing, the business. And funnily enough, what's really interesting actually is that how these things come all the way around, is that I've now connected my ex-business partners with my son, who is now managing players in Brazil. So so it's really interesting. So they're going to be anyway. It's a nice story. So anyway, so that was it. Yes. So I gave that up and went off to Bible school and decided to live by faith, which was the most ridiculous thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to ask about that then. So obviously, again, like I'm still trying to wrap my head around your life, to be honest, up until this point. But all of this madness has happened. Mm-hmm. Calling it madness is such an understatement.
It's what it was.
It's an understatement, but all this madness has happened, and as you said, you're kind of searching for an answer. You're searching for a reason, a purpose almost. And as you said, your friends were talking about Katie and telling you to come along to that church, and that's where you'd find healing, or that's the God of healing. And obviously you're thinking about Chantel, but I'm also sure, whether consciously or not, you're also thinking about yourself as well. How do you go from that to now I want to join Bible school? Obviously I know you now, so I know that you've gone around the world setting up churches. I think Finland, Brazil, America, all over the gaff. So how do you go from all of that, and especially as someone that's dealt with so much tragedy, to become evangelist supreme, like the person who's on this thing? So
I think the thing that, in a way, I wish I hadn't mentioned the name of the church, because what the answer to your question actually doesn't leave them in a good light. But actually, in fairness to them, let me say that the environment is agnostic. It's how you behave in the environment. It's like saying, oh, you shouldn't go to nightclubs. Well, why? Well, because you just shouldn't. Well, why shouldn't you go to nightclubs? Yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with nightclubs. It's how you behave when you go to a nightclub. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? So on that basis, let me make the point that it's like going to a nightclub.
Yeah.
It's not. There's nothing inherently wrong with the nightclub. Yeah. And there's nothing inherently wrong with nightclubs. But if you decide to go to the nightclubs and be an idiot, well, that's because you're an idiot. It's not. It's not because there's something wrong with the nightclub. It's just because you're an idiot. And so for me, the idiocy that I was caught up with was that I had this idea that the game they seemed to be playing in this church was kind of God and me, and there were certain things that you could do to make kind of you more on point and on side with God. And the thing that I wanted more than anything else, Damini, was I was driven by this absolutely obsessive need to not be rejected. So I went into an environment that was set up. It was just like crack. To someone like me, it's like crack, because you go, this is how you get accepted in this church. You join the mission team. You do this. You do that. So I just straight into the veins. I mean, it's like, hello, this is like acceptance heaven. I'm like a junkie for it, and I was good at it, and I was, so I would just get into it. So what happened was that I got to 1999. I'd given up business. I'd gone into the Bible school because it was the acceptance route. I was going to be the best at it, and this was like, hello, why is this like? Who doesn't get how to do this? And I went to the school. I started at the school, went straight through the school, and they offered me a job. And I thought, oh yeah, no brainer. So I took over running the first year students. Then I knocked that out of the park. Bear in mind, not because I'm good, because I'm obsessed. If I decide I'm going to do something and it looks like a route to acceptance, I'm all in, right?
Yeah.
So 3 years later, I was the head of the school. So I'm running the school now. And then I was asked to go on this trip to Brazil. And the problem was that things were starting to, even I couldn't overlook the level of, I'm really sad to say this actually, and I don't want to say this, I don't want in any sense sound vindictive, because maybe things are different now, but in this particular moment, this is what it was. The level of spiritual abuse that people were suffering in this place was just unbelievable. And it reminded me of being in the orphanage. And I'm like, wait a minute, because we used to have the kids abused like day after day after day after day. The nuns would abuse them. It was just unbelievable. It was unbelievable. We were all groomed one way or another. There was a guy that used to be who had targeted me for grooming as a kid. It was just horrifying. So these stories you're seeing now about, the Barry Bennells and all these stuff, this was standard. And the kids in the orphanage, no one gives a shit about them. So anyone could just walk in, abuse the kids, do what the hell you like. No one cared. And the nuns were doing it, for God's sake. It was this nightmare. So now I'm in this church, and they're doing the same stuff, right? Not sexual,
not abuse, but spiritual.
And it was like, what? And so that just tripped me. I just lost my mind over it. And I thought, well, I couldn't do anything about this when I was a child, but sure as I ain't putting up with this now. Anyway, I went away to this big event, and I was in Brazil, and they used to have these amazing sort of times of this ministry stuff, and they would all pray for everybody, and all this stuff would apparently happen. And what they would do is they would call the ministry teams to go and sort of pray with people and all that. So this call came to do that, and I just got to get up, just being obedient, right? I got up to get up, and I just heard, maybe for one of the most clear times I've ever heard the Lord in my life, I just heard the Lord say, stop. And I was like, what? And it was like being back in the carnival. It was just like being back in the carnival riots. There was all this crazy stuff going on. And I just ended up kneeling on the floor. I remember it now like it was yesterday. It was 1999. I was kneeling on the floor, and I saw this picture, right? And the picture was me wearing a Hugo Boss suit, blue, with a book under my arm and a big smile. I was the guy, and next to me was a picture of Hayley looking like Billie Holiday on the worst day of her life.
For those who don't know, Billie Holiday is a very famous singer in America. She had one of the most dreadful lives as well.
Unbelievable.
Horrible life, but she was a very, very soul singer.
Yeah, she would be the forerunner she would be the Whitney Houston of her day.
Yeah.
And she was astonishing, but she had a terrible life.
And Tupac says, then some lady named Billie Holiday came.
She was the girl.
Anyway, yeah.
She was a great singer.
Amazing singer, yeah.
And she and this picture was withering, and then the picture changed, and there was Hayley looking like Whitney Houston on the best day of her life. And I heard this voice say to me, how much is too much for you? And where's his end? Right? You're going to sacrifice your wife, your children? Well, so these people will accept you? Are you serious? And I'm like, oh my God. And then I just said, you know what? This has got to stop. So I went back to the hotel, and I remember being in the hotel that night in Sao Paulo, just thinking, this thing's over. Went back home, sat the children and Hayley down, and literally, forgive the language for your listeners, but literally repented to them. I just said, I'm so sorry. Went into the church, met with the pastor guy, and that was a train wreck, and left. Well, I say left. Had to work out my notice, so that was That was December, so I had to work through the school year. So I left in July. So I had to play this out for 7 months until July, and I couldn't say anything to anybody. And it was really horrible. Actually, at the end of it was so awful. But that's another story. So we left in July, and then we took a little bit of a break. And then I felt like, do you know what? The thing I felt really strongly that God was saying to me was, so I want you to, and this will make sense to you when I tell you this now, I want you to do two things we don't know, right? Number one is, we know that black people will go to a church that's led by white people. We know that. Mm-hmm. But what we haven't proved is whether white people will go to a church that's led by black people. But we don't know that. Because black churches are very excluding, like, unless you can clap hands and do all that nonsense, and wear a hat and come in the minibus and all that foolishness. Nobody knows what nobody gets it, right? Even black people don't get it, right? So that was one thing, and the other thing was, and can you grow a church by grace alone and nothing else, just by grace?